As Walmart Canada's senior security leader and an advocate of agile security, which is why he's joining us today, he's spoken at various DevOps, InfoSec, and AI conferences. As Walmart's information security portfolio manager, he also oversees asset confidentiality, integrity, and availability, as well as protecting us, the customer, as well as the associate's information. After graduating from McMaster University, he obtained his CISSP, his Microsoft Azure, his ISCA, his CISM, and his Lean Six Sigma certifications. In addition to being a member of Gartner Evanta's governing body, as well as CyberX, he's also a member of the EC Council's advisory board. Over the past 20 years, he's helped many people in various organizations and industries resolve issues and business problems in innovative ways. He's also co-authored the first MPA anti-privacy and security standard, also known as CDSA APCP. He's also implemented Walmart Canada's first security posture for Walmart Canada Bank. And a quote that we've recently found from him: "Modern security threats demand fresh, innovative thinking across all aspects of technology," unquote. His current work in GRC has also allowed him to build a continuous and risk evaluation framework for risk mitigation. Well, with that in a nutshell is our guest speaker for this evening. And without further ado, I give you Mr. Mohsen Azari. Mohsen, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Mo. That was a lot of kind words. That I'm not sure if I can put them all those together. So I like to take the opportunity and thank everybody on this forum, especially Andrea, Mo, and the entire organizing group. So for allowing me to participate into this fun event. So really thankful for your attention, everybody that is on the call. And I'll try to make things a little bit simple and try to explain things not in too technical terms as much as I can. So we'll see. And then as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to post it in the chat window. And one of us will gather all the questions and we can review the questions at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let me run the presentation quickly, and then we can go ahead and start. Okay. All right, so I hope everybody can see my screen now, which should read DevSecOps, the Agile Approach to Security. I actually was given this mandate a little while ago when I was working for Evanta, the Gartner group, on one of the CISO summit during the COVID. They allowed me to participate in one of the events, and I managed to have this presentation in front of a larger audience. So since then, I actually modified it a little bit, and I'll see if I can, with a couple of additions that I've done, bring it to this group's attention. The whole idea of this presentation is to familiarize everybody with the other side of security. So normally when we talk about security, we talk about bottlenecks, we talk about, oh, security is not our best friend, but they always stop things, and we should really avoid them maybe at some point. Sometimes we should really bypass them and all that good stuff. But that is not really the modern era of security. So with that, I'll try to mention a couple of those points as we go along the presentation. So some of you may have heard, and I'm sure you have, DevOps. So what is actually DevOps? DevOps, in essence, brings a little bit of a faster and agile approach to how we implement our solution within a business and how we actually drive the ideas forward with some usable products, which means are there going to be different part of the products that can go at different times? Are there smaller versions? Are they complexity within the product. So keep that in mind about the DevOps. And then to add, we're going to add a bit of a twist, and we're going to now introduce another concept, which is called DevSecOps. So DevSecOps basically ensures everything that DevOps can bring into the table, but it also will bring another piece to the equation, which is the security piece. And by putting all that together, we'll see if we can accomplish some good. As you can see from the diagram that I have, on the right side, if you imagine the DevOps as a constant flow of different aspects of the planning and organization that happens within the business process, security is the purple. The purple that basically surrounds the whole concept. So at any given point, what the rationale is we need to keep security in check, and we need to keep that as part of the entire process. So with that, DevSecOps, a lot of people, when we talk about DevSecOps, they see that as bringing together a lot of business verticals together. So some of that can be considered as the application side of things, the application deployment, IT operations, security, quality assurance, and even in this time and age, as we go through bringing and integrating security into many aspects of the business, a lot of people are actually bringing other side of the business, like marketing, like sales, into the same process flow. So for us to have a unanimous approach to building application and our agile approach, we need to actually consider everything as part of the unified process. So all these things that you see with regards to different verticals, they actually become horizontal at some point, working together hand in hand. So with that, as I mentioned, there is some old thinking that is floating around with regards to security, the way that we handle and approach security. Some, as soon as somebody talks about security, the human element comes in play, and they say, well, yes, people, they make mistake, humans are cause of, problems, and, we need to find the mistake, we need to see who made the bad judgment, who did the inaccurate assessment, and all that. And then there is complexity of the system. We say, oh, yeah, the old rationale says, let me build a system that is complex and so big and that has so many logics that it can never fail. The old thinking was that the complex system with so many different logics can never fail. And then, sometimes again, when we look at the human behavior, and then today with the AI, that's another complete different topics. Human behavior at times, we consider that to be erratic, to be unsafe. So we always try to change that human behavior with code. We think that by changing a human behavior and codify it, we can actually solve the problem. So, and then we say, oh, another aspect is, how can we actually make systems safer and more secure? Well, let's get rid of the human element as much as we can. Humans are problems. So that's sort of the old rationale and the way of thinking that many of us, have from maybe a decade or so ago. But the new way of thinking, and I'm sure many of you, when you talk about your agile process, when you talk about your DevSecOps, your DevOps, and the process flow going from point A to point B and constantly in a loop, what we talk about now is human error is a symptom of a deeper problem of the system. Human error, if I give a lot of access to you when you don't actually need it, if I create a problematic, system flow that at some point, that system flow will crash and doesn't get you the right output, is not the human error at that point of time. Is actually a design problem that happened sometimes in the past. And then when so at a lot of time when we talk about at any given time, a human error, we forget about the context. What that human error, what is the context of what we call a human error at that point? Maybe that context, if you really think too deep about it, that context can actually justify that human error at that point in time. And then I'm sure many of you, now that you design your systems and you design your process, we all know that the complex system cannot be the safest system. Actually, we have to some degree take the complexity out of the systems as much as we can, and that would be less prone to problems and errors. So, and obviously, the way that the more complex that we make the system, it's always a trade-off with efficiency and safety of the system. So at what point do we keep that balance? At what point do we say that we got an agile process versus a complex process? And then again, that aspect of the people's safety and security comes through practice. So whenever that's something like this forum that gets together, and we call it, you call it the agile practice, over time, the agile practice actually proves itself. So human element over time, as you practice it more and more, it actually proves itself that it has a role into the process. And now just to summarize the whole thing about what we call a DevSecOps and why I call it an agile approach is basically some of the outdated mentality, some of the outdated rationale that I just mentioned about the people aspect of things, about the telling people what to do versus asking them what they need. And every day at our workplace, we come across that. We, rather than a top-down approach and constantly the manager telling the, other people, no, you go do this, you go do that. Let's have a different approach and say, to accomplish that goal, what is it that you guys need so we can accomplish the same goal together? So, and then the question of control versus compliance, is it that I need, as a security professional, I need to put so much control and compliance that actually inhibits, performance of that, whole process? No, a lot of times we need to rely on our competencies and a common sense, as we talked about at the beginning of the call. And then again, the positive approach. We all advocate of a positive approach. Agile, one of the cornerstone of the Agile and DevOps and the way that we work together these days is a positive approach. We don't want to concentrate on the negativity that happens within our world. So yes, there is a lot of bad thing happens, but when you actually compile your metrics, there has to be some kind of a metric for the good of the world, not just the metrics of the bad things that happen. So yeah, let's promote all that good metrics at the same time. So, and then the way that I see DevSecOps and DevOps, they basically go hand in hand. I see it as a journey. As we were talking again at the beginning of the call with Andrea, it was mentioned that Agile is really a journey. It's not a simple, term that we basically give to somebody and then they understand it and they go. It's a process that comes, it starts at some point, gets to a second point, and then goes in an iteration, and that keep going and restarting and revamping and reiterating that all the time. So with that, some of the key elements that would be implemented into that process are a common goal between those cross-functional groups that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. All those cross-functional groups, they need to come together, understand the mission of the organization, understand the mission of their department, and then work towards achieving the same goal. Yes, there has to be some kind of a project management methodology. Yet we need to pick that. And many of the times when we talk about a rapid change and pace of things that happens, we pick the methodology to be as an agile methodology. So that's basically what gives us the tool to actually move it forward. And then continuous improvement. Continuous improvement means as we go in that journey and start and getting the first output out and then start and getting the second one, this journey, we continuously, with the feedback loop, we look at that and bring and more improvement for the second iteration. Yes, the MVP one had these type of deliverables, but for MVP two, because we're now more mature, we can actually deliver more efficiency into the process and the feedback loop that I mentioned earlier. And then when we go to the presenting the output and the outcome, obviously the metrics, they play a big role, and we need to be mindful of metrics. It goes back to those positive metrics as well that we talked earlier. Those that always have to be available for somebody to actually judge whether this process is working or not. And with InfoSec, as with anything else, we need to, let me actually go back, sorry. With InfoSec, like with any other process, we need to start with MVP one. So we need to start small. We need to have something delivered first and then prove that actually that works, and then start with the, expanding it to other things. Same as with Agile, same as with the new revolution that is happening within the industry, we always need to embrace the failure. We always need to allow for the failure. We always need to advocate for, yes, fail, but fail fast and fix quick. So those are the things that we need to advocate for, and we also need to remove friction as much as we can. When we're talking about those verticals working hand in hand, we need to make sure as these groups, they work together, how we can actually, bring synergy into that group, how we can actually remove friction. Is it by talking the same language? Is it by eliminating a lot of those technical words? Is it by making sure that we work toward a common understandable and achievable goal? So those are some of the things that actually blends those teams together. And as with everything else, we need to avoid analysis paralysis. That goes back to that same complex environment that we were talking at the beginning, that we need to make those environment as simple as and manageable as we can. And continuing along the same idea, when we talk about InfoSec, we have to start at some kind of a baseline. So when you talk about your own projects, you start at point A and say, this is what I have, this is where I want to go. So yes, you start at the baseline, then you go through this process. And as you go through the process, try to see how much of that you can actually automate, how much of that would need a human element in that, and how much that can be done, with those codes that we were talking about. And then, if you remember the purple line that was covering the entire DevOps, those purple line, it means that it has to be secure throughout. So that means there is no point that you can actually not have security anymore. A lot of us, we have seen how bad things happen in the industry when we actually start doing something at a given point of time, and then we let go and we wash our hands and move away. And then, a year down the road, because the code or the process that we put in place 2 years ago never got updated and never got improved, problems that starts to happen. So the security throughout means that it has to go through a continuous process of constantly making that application, making that solution secure. And then going back to that working together and, as a unified team, security always has to be on the same page as everybody else. Everybody else also have to partner with security and be on the same page as security. So there is no fear There is no I know more than you do. We all work towards the same common goal. So we just know a little bit more in certain areas than the others, but bringing it together, then you have a baseline that you can build upon that. And we already mentioned about the fact that we want to fix things quickly. So the key focus area for any kind of a security platform of the future that we want to basically consider is automation. Yes, identify where humans are of value, keep the humans, and also add as much automation as you can. Real-time feedback, again, we reiterate some of that again, as with any other process, the feedback loop has to exist for continuous improvement. And empower the employees to be security champions. A lot of times, what we actually don't do in our organization is we rely solely on the information security team. They are going to fix everything. You don't worry about the thing. What we want to do, we want to move away from that mentality, and we want to say, hey, listen, you and I are on the same boat. If something bad happens to you, the same bad things happen to me. So let's work together, and all of us basically practice the same common sense towards the security. And this way, when all of us is a security champion, guess what? We are always more prepared to fight with all the breaches and the threats that are happening around us. And then obviously, with one of the things that we constantly need to be abreast of is making sure that we invest in our people, we invest in our human, we reduce the bottlenecks, and we remove them as much as we can. And this training would always goes a long way to accomplish a lot of our goals. And what are the key benefits to the business if we follow this approach? So the key benefit to this, when we follow this approach between InfoSec and all the other areas and bring them under a horizontal view rather than a vertical view, guess what? We can get the products faster to the market with fewer risk. So 2 days down the road, our product would not be hacked. So guess what? When it gets hacked, then the reputation of the company is at risk. So once we do that, we actually have a lot less risk for the products that we bring to the market even faster. And by that, maturing that horizontal approach that we talked about, we can actually break down the silos. So the application development team would not complain and say InfoSec doesn't understand what I'm talking about. The marketing team doesn't say that, oh, InfoSec has always been a bottleneck, because guess what? On day one, at the inception of the project, they all talked about what are the requirements? What is it that we are looking for? So by breaking down those barriers, we can actually achieve a common goal. And then by having this approach, we can have breaking down the barriers and improve the overall business, not just individual department. Individual department, yes, they have their own goals and objectives, but as a whole, the whole business will actually be elevated. So we are going one further above departmental goals and achieving the organizational goals. And guess what? When we work together, we work as a team, and we all share responsibilities. It's not that I'm making a mistake. It's all of us have done something that we can do better. So at that point, there is no finger pointing. I'm not going to finger point anybody else just because you failed. Now you're a bad human element. No, that's not the way it works. It's actually the team that has made some kind of a wrong assessment at some point, but that is part and parcel of any improvement. We have to fail until we find our failure and we move toward improving that. So all that basically means security is going to be an integral part of the DevOps. It's going to be at the very corner of the agile process to make sure that anything that we talk about within this process, we actually have a say in that from day one. So in short, what I'm trying to summarize here is we want to build a security culture that for the business that brings everybody together and not just for a few people. It's not just for developers. Developers, yes, they do need security. They do need to be a security champion. They need to work with InfoSec, but it's not just for the DevOps. And it's not just for developers. It's for everybody within the organization. And then we want to provide all the feedback, all the controls and everything, all the insight for that would actually ensures the compliance and the operation down the road. So all that are going to be part and parcel of this new approach that we talked about. So in essence, I'm going to quickly go over a concept that I came across in RSA conference. I don't know, I think I still have a little bit of time. So I came across this concept at the RSA security in 2020, just before the COVID happened, actually. I'm going to share that with you and you see if it's going to make any sense. We call it the measure approach. The measure approach is, it constitute all these topics, which is makers, experimentation, automation, safety, unrestrained sharing, rugged, and empathy. Let's see what I mean by each one of those. So makers, we want to, whoever that is going, somebody is going to make the code, somebody is going to make the application, somebody is going to bring that value chain into life. So customers, security that will basically working on the quality of the product at the same time. So those makers need to work to get together to even bring that solution to light. Then there is experimentation that we need to do. So, there are things happen that we need to make better. There is some cause of problems at some point that then we need to fix them at a later date. There is automation that we put into the process. So automation plays a key role. Then safety would always be encompassing to all aspects of this process. So safety would always be there. The unrestrained sharing. So that means transparency. Transparency should always be a cornerstone of any agile process, of any DevOps process. So we make sure that that sharing of whatever code, whatever process, whatever data is always available to everybody within the process. And the software and the solution always need to be rugged, and the empathy, we always need to have empathy amongst the team. There is one point that is at the bottom that has fallen off the screen, but there needs to be an element of the empathy across the organization, across the teams that work together to achieve this agile approach. So all that come together, we come to that measure approach that I mentioned. So in summary, at the end, is not agile or security, it is actually agile and security. So that pretty much brings my presentation to a close. So I would like to take a look and see if there was any questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Awesome. Before we get into questions, I just want to say that I need to join your group. I need to do all of this. You've convinced me. That was amazing.
No, I'm happy that you liked it, but yeah, some of the things are actually pretty convincing to myself. So
fair enough. So I want to open up the room for questions. If there are any questions in the chat, I know Kola has a bunch of questions. I have some too, but I want to let some people go first. So yes. Ask Mohsen anything.
Yes, please. Just go easy on me.
Okay. I got one, Wilson.
Sure.
So I know you've been making strides to synergize security with agile practices within the framework that we follow within Walmart. And we made great strides, I think, in the last, I want to say 3 years or so, and it's become even more cohesive. Obviously, there's always going to be work. There's always going to be places that we can do better. Where do you see, and I'm just maybe kind of pigeonholing a few aspects of, but where do you see us where we can do better in bringing the two areas still together? Where do you see opportunities still lie?
Yeah, one of the things that our group actually advocates, and we talk about it at the CISO Summit, is awareness and training. Is one of those areas that we cannot have enough, to be honest with you. Is when we collaborate and know each other and can talk the same language together, and when we actually cross-train each other and become that concept of the security champion that I was mentioning before, a lot of time you can actually, it's a very transferable kind of a skill. You can take it from work, you can take it home, and you can practice the same as home. You can take it to school and practice it at school. So a lot of that actually go to awareness and training and cross-training between the various different teams.
Very good.
I think I have a question to segue into that.
Sure.
Thank you for that, Mohammed. So my question is, as an agile project manager, I face agile teams every day. How do you handle or manage pushback when people don't understand where you're going to with agile and security?
So a lot of time, and that's a really good question. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of time we do get a pushback. The pushback that we get is mostly because security it gets involved at the latter stages of the project rather than at the initial stages of the project. So what we try to do when we get that kind of a pushback, we try to inform and help the team with some metrics, with something that we actually have done before, and we can actually prove the if you follow this kind of methodology and the approach that InfoSec is putting in front and working with the team, you can actually achieve certain output that would benefit both you and both us and the organization. So we try to show the benefit of working together, the benefit of having that unified approach, and then for that period of time, and then for the future, we try to actually work much closer at the inception of the project rather than at the latter stages of the project. Thank you.
If I can ask a question.
Sure.
So thank you for that, Mohsen. I really like the concept of the security champion and working together to get the team to follow the and work together for that kind of a security team, as you told me. I would like to know, because there has always been a friction between business goals and security goals. What is the approach that you follow to so that we can let the people know that there is actually a value in following the security along with as a concept of one team? And it might be related to the question that Kola asked, how it was more towards the team members. I'm more interested in how to let the business people know the value of security.
Yep. And one thing that I've always been fond of doing is transparency. So we need to bring transparency into security and for the business. So one thing that we are doing now today is we bring the metrics, and we basically take a look at what are some of the things that we need to accomplish and justify and make them visible to the business, so business can actually see for releasing this product A, you actually have to spend 200K on InfoSec, you have to spend 400K on so and so resources. So if you have a complete view of everything that actually goes into building that product A, and all on a dashboard that is visible to the C-level, to the decision makers, they can easily see that in security is actually part of the process, is not an afterthought. Every dollar that goes into building that product comes from a group work across so many cross-functional teams.
Thanks, Mohsen.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Sure.
So as a security leader, I'm really happy to hear people not being left out in the agile and security movement, because I have a lot of friends who are in the security space, and there's talk of a lot of automation replacing people's jobs. But with what you've discussed today, it seems like you're a proponent, or you're in favor of the movement of identifying where you can train people a lot more to ensure that they're not left out of the security movement. So do you think more companies are going to take this approach in the future? Or do you think security is moving towards more autonomous systems that just have little or less human input? Or some, minute human input, but then it's less rigid, and it doesn't always work perfectly, but yeah.
No, it's actually a very good question, and a lot of you may have noticed that recently there is a position that actually being created at the board level. The board level used to be completely detached from security. They had no clue about security. Lately, one of the board members actually has quite a bit of knowledge about the security. Because the companies are worried about their reputation. The companies are worried about if they bring a faulty product to the market, they're going to be haunted, and they're going to lose that reputation. And guess what? By losing that reputation, chances are that company a few years down the road may not even exist anymore. So that message of security is actually going way up than it didn't used to go. A lot of time, the decision making is at the C-level, is with a very senior InfoSec person. A lot of times at the board level, there is people that have definitely experience from a security world, or at least from a compliance part of things, or from the audit side of things. So all that come together basically shows that security in this time and age has a huge impact to decision making at the highest level.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to ask my question now. Lots of companies, of course, you're hearing about getting hacked. I mean, even our province vaccine booking system looks like it got hacked. Do you feel like organizations are truly prepared for what is coming down the line when it comes to cybersecurity?
Another great question. So whether I can say that everybody's truly prepared, that's probably not the case. What I can tell you is a lot of companies, they are putting a process to deal with the breaches and the problems. It's not the question of if, it's the question of when it happens to me. I know at some point down the road, something bad is going to happen, either in my small department or my business or my larger business or my region or the whole global company. So at some point, something will happen. That's why one thing that I noticed, Andrea, that is happening today is a lot of organizations that are creating this business unit or this, this department to actually take care of and establish a process when something bad happens. What are the things that we can put the lid on that bad thing and that don't allow it to propagate as quickly as it might? Let's contain it and reduce the exposure as quickly and as fast as we can. So from that point of view, I think there is definitely improvement in the industry, and there is movement toward creating that competency within the organization. I think I missed your second question.
Yes, I was saying that my second question is, do you think big organizations are doing the right thing in kind of using the lockdown method? There's a lot of times in my current workplace, I have to do things on my personal computer, email it to myself just to have certain functionality. Is that even the right approach where people now can't even do anything like simple Google searches?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that. Another great question. So actually the lockdown and the COVID time has created quite new challenges for all of us, because if you think about the assets and the data, the way that what's happening, a lot of these assets, they're going from a controlled environment to an uncontrolled environment, which is basically our home. So there is definitely new security challenges that need to be met. And like you say, you take it home and your printer doesn't work, and then you don't have a printer like the way that you had it at work, then what are you going to do? Because you have a lockdown of your system. So a lot of companies now actually accelerating the movement to going into the zero trust. I don't know, many of you probably heard about the concept. So zero trust basically says that you can connect from anywhere and from any place with any kind of connection. And as you connect, you get access to anything that you are allowed to do. So if my profile says Mohsen is allowed to print at home, then I have no problem printing at home. If my profile says Mohsen is allowed to access certain share on the cloud or in the data center, then I don't have any problem accessing that. So yes, there is definitely a challenge that a lot of companies are facing. I don't have a silver bullet for you to say that, use this approach and all your problems will go away. We're constantly working with that challenge and getting a little bit better, but zero trust is the answer to your, if you can advocate for that at your organization, make sure you advocate for zero trust.
Okay, cool. Thanks. All right, guys, don't be shy. Ask any questions. If not, then I can ask mine. And there you go. Kola, go ahead.
Yes. One more question. So with the rise in security threats and a lot more companies waking up to the need to have robust security measures implemented, there is supposed to be a rise in security positions and security jobs across very many industries now. As a project manager with a somewhat of a security background plus a technology background, I haven't touched security in a very long time. Yeah. I know there are a couple of friends who are also on this call or in this session wondering how they want to take advantage of what the future might hold with the space blowing up as it has in the last few years. I do know ISACA as an organization has certifications that you can take and be recognized in the industry, but I don't want to give you an answer. I want to ask you from your own point of view, how would you, or what would you recommend to a newbie who is looking to join the security train, understand exactly what it entails to be a security analyst or a consultant in the security industry, and how they can go from there?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I actually, funny you should ask that, because myself and Mo had the same conversation not too long ago about what sort of path we should pick now that the market is so hot and every organization are basically revamping and hiring more InfoSec resources. So one of the things that when a resume come across our desk and we want to take a look and see who we are going to hire, we are looking with some kind of at least baseline certification. So a lot of you probably heard about CISSP. Some may have heard about the CISM, CISM. Some of you probably heard about A+ on security and things like that. What I think from your perspective, having worked on the project management side of things and knowing the product and product handling of the products, I think something that you can start and would not be too difficult to achieve and would have a longer and broader recognition is one of those ISACA CISM certification. I think I mentioned that to Mo not too long ago, that for the effort that you put in achieving that, because CISSP, yes, is one of the best, but the effort that you have to put in and the work experience that needs to actually achieve that takes some time to actually get that to that level. But I find something like CISM or something in that category is actually not too hard to achieve and not too hard to get. It doesn't need a lot of experience, and it's definitely a complement to whatever project management that you have been doing so far.
Thank you. You just answered a huge question for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Andrea smiling.
Because it was going to be the same question.
Yeah, because for me, I've looked at CISSP against CISM, against CISA, against SSCP. So many security certifications out there that have different pools or different recognitions. But what we want to be careful of, even with people in my industry, is getting the right certification that shows how much you know. CISSP has a broader recognition, but if you don't have the understanding to back it up,
Yep.
It wouldn't serve you as well as you need it to, as opposed to understanding the 4 different domains you will need to come across in CISM, which may be a lot easier as a segue into that industry. And then the more you stay into it and you understand exactly how it functions and how it relates to other business parts, then you can look to the future and proceed to get higher certificate. Yeah,
that's very true. CISSP, which is the cloud version of it, those are definitely recognized more towards somebody with a little bit of engineering and tech background that can actually complement that work on that. And also you need to have a little bit of experience that to actually get that certificate to be useful to you.
thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, Andrea and team, maybe on a future session, we could invite Mohsen and maybe he can talk us through the different certifications and then the different areas of career paths we can take within security. If that's something you'd be interested in, Mohsen.
Sure. Anything that I can help this group, this lively group, I'll be more than happy to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Cool. So we're just going to do a quick time check. It's now 6 minutes after 8, and I understand that it is Thursday night, the night before you say, yay, it's Friday. So I just want to make sure I do a roundtable. Anyone else want to ask any questions whatsoever? Don't be shy. You can go ahead and put it in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask away. If not, then we'll do a quick roundup. Check in the chat.
Hey, Mohsen, Tatali here.
Awesome.
Nice
Yes.
to see you after so long.
Yes, for sure.
I wanted to ask you, so, I've done my fair share of security reviews with your team. So one of the things that had jumped out to me was the understanding of network, along with security, obviously the policies and, the law around cybersecurity. But one very important thing was the network piece of it as well. When we were discussing solution with the analyst, I wanted you to actually maybe touch a bit on that as well. How important is understanding of network with security, or that hand in hand, or that combination, basically.
Yeah, for sure. A great question. So what you mentioned about understanding and conveying the message to the security is actually quite important. Many of the time, we want somebody to partner with us that actually knows this solution in and out. So if you bring something to us, you should be able to speak to it in a sense that This is my data flow. This is my, the way that my processes work together. This is my input. This is my output. And this is where I get from point A to point B. So the reason that we actually a lot of time insist on the network, having a little bit of knowledge on the network, things like how do you connect the two applications? How do you interface the application? Do you use FTP to connect them? Do you use the telnet to connect them? Do you use certain API to connect them? Do you use port 80, port 443? Some of the basic, we are not asking for having a CISSP, knowing the network in and out. What we are asking is have some knowledge of the way your interfaces work with your product. And if you have that knowledge, many of the time is a basic knowledge of ports and protocols. If you can bring that knowledge to the analyst, you can actually talk the same language. And at that point, the process would be much easier for both of you to continue.
Just a follow up to that, Mohsen, what are the acceptable ways to convey those? I know we used to do a solution architecture sitting with the architect, but what are the other ways that we can convey that to the analyst?
The good way of doing that is defining your perimeter. There is divide where your internals and externals are, and how the internal and externals, they connect to each other. Because a lot of time, yes, internal, the database is connecting to the application, connecting to the web server, all that internal is fine. You go through one unified platform. We know that for you to connect to the SQL, you use certain ports, so that's fine. But as soon as you cross the border and you go from one perimeter to another one, those are the areas that are of utmost importance to any risk analyst, that they want you to be able to divide as much as you can your perimeters and see how you communicate between each one of those areas.
Thanks, Mohsen. You reminded me of all the conversations that I had.
Hopefully good conversations too.
Very good conversations. I did learn a lot from the team. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.